50 times. You called it stupid, useless, and a medieval vanity project.
Look at her face.
Is a border wall stupid?
Why don't we just fix it? Why don't we fix the problem? Whoa, you've been in power for the last 3.5, 4 years now coming up. So why didn't you do it there, Kamala?
Because we were working with Congress and hoping that actually we could have a long-term fix to the problem instead of a short-term fix.
You couldn't have done both at the same time?
If you've ever parented a child, you know you make lots of mistakes, too. In my role,
Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are not taking the same exam. And I think it bothers people. He gets to be lawless. She has to be flawless. That's what's unfair.
Kamala had her worst night yet, and these clips are brutal. This one from Anderson Cooper was digging in on the wall issue. Of course, immigration is a catastrophe for her because she made immigration a catastrophe. And so this is just one of many clips. There are others, and then we're going to see what the reaction was because it was not good. You can see on CNN, Jake Tapper, Dana Bash, and more, they're saying that she did not land. She got fact-checked on this thing. Even Van Jones and others are going, uh-oh, this was rough. And so if you missed it, here are the highlights. She was there, asked about immigration. This might be one of the worst exchanges, but here is what it sounded like with Cooper.
Under Donald Trump, you criticized the wall more than 50 times. You called it stupid, useless, and a medieval vanity project.
Look at her face.
Is a border wall stupid?
well, let's talk about Donald Trump and that border wall. So remember, Donald Trump said Mexico would pay for it? Come on, they didn't. How much of that wall did he build? I think the last number I saw was about 2%. And then when it came for time for him to do a photo op, you know where he did it? In the part of the wall that President Obama built.
But you're agreeing to a bill
on.
that would earmark $650 million to continue building that wall.
I pledge that I am going to bring forward that bipartisan bill to
With wall
further
money?
strengthen and secure our border. Yes, I am. And I'm going to work across the aisle to pass a comprehensive bill that deals with a broken immigration system. I think Jackson's question, part of it was to acknowledge that America has always had migration, but there needs to be a legal process for it. People have to earn it. And that's the point that I think is the most important point that can be made,
Okay, what about the
which is
wall,
we need
though?
a president who is grounded in common sense and practical outcomes. Like, let's just fix this thing. Let's just fix it. Why is there any ideological perspective on this? Let's just fix the problem.
Yikes.
To fix the problem, you're doing this compromise bill. It does call for $650 million that was earmarked under Trump to actually still go to build the wall.
I am not afraid of good ideas where they occur.
So you don't think it's stupid anymore?
I think what he did and how he did it did not make much sense because he actually didn't do much of anything.
But is the wall a good idea or not?
I just talked about that wall, right? We just talked about it. He didn't actually.
Yeah, why didn't the wall get done? Well, it's because the Democrats were digging their heels in at every turn to stop that from making any progress, right? They weren't funding it. They'd rather give $100 billion over to foreign countries rather than fund our own border. Billions to Ukraine for their border with Russia, but not ours. And she's almost dissembling right in front of us.
Do much of anything.
But you do want to build some wall.
I want to strengthen our border.
Oh, good. Okay, so she's a pro-border wall builder now? Amazing. So it means she's totally fraudulent. So here was some more on the immigration issue with Cooper talking about border crossings. Why didn't you just fix it, right? She just screeched at us. Why don't we just fix it? Why don't we fix the problem? Whoa, you've been in power for the last 3.5, 4 years now coming up. So why didn't you do it there, Kamala?
2022, 2023, there were record border crossings. Your administration took hundreds of executive actions. It didn't stem the flow. Numbers kept going up. Finally, in 2024, just in June, 3 weeks before the first presidential debate with Joe Biden, you institute executive actions that had a dramatic impact, really shut down people crossing over. Why didn't your administration do that in 2022, 2023?
Amazing.
First
Great
of all,
question.
you're exactly right, Anderson. And as of today, we have cut the flow of immigration by over half. In fact, the numbers I saw most recently, illegal immigration
But if
is
it was
low.
that easy with that executive action, why not do it in 2022, 2023?
Amazing.
Because we were working with Congress and hoping that actually we could have a long-term fix to the problem instead of a short-term fix.
You couldn't have done both at the same time?
Well, here's the thing. We have to understand that ultimately this problem is going to be fixed through congressional action.
Okay, so they made the problem worse via executive fiat so that Congress would then have a reason or an incentive to start working towards a solution. So they caused a problem in order to fix the problem. They could have just kept Trump's policies in place, would have never had to have any of that happen. But of course, we know what the game plan was. They wanted to bring in as many people as possible, including non-citizens, to have them register to vote, even though they say that they're not doing that, and have them vote. That's just one part of the puzzle. The other part is they're trying to bring in people who are non-citizens and make them citizens immediately. And they're doing it in swing states, flying them in all over the place. So she knew what she was doing, okay? She actually may not have known what she was doing because she doesn't know much of anything. But the people who are actually the puppet masters who were running her around, they know what they're doing. And it was all an intentional operation. And now they're fixing it because the public has some eyeballs on it. But shout out to Cooper for those questions. Those were some good questions here. David Portnoy even got this one for us. He clipped this. Here's what this exchange was.
Is there something you can point to in your life, political life or in your life in the last 4 years, that you think is a mistake that you have learned from?
My entire career? Say it.
I mean, I've made many mistakes, and they range from, if you've ever parented a child, you know you make lots of mistakes too. In my role as vice president, I mean, I've probably worked very hard at making sure that I am well versed on issues, and I think that is very important. It's a mistake not to be well versed on an issue and feel compelled to answer a question.
Wow. So it's like, hey, what's your biggest weakness? Well, my biggest weakness is that I care too much about being honest, I guess. Okay. All right. So that's Kamala, just brutal. And what's interesting is she brought up the parenting thing, which comes up, but I know it's a super sensitive topic. Nobody wants to talk about it, but somebody wants to talk about it. Laura Powell is talking about it and said, I've made many mistakes. They range from, if you've never parented a child, you make a lot of mistakes. And shout out to our step parents. Amazing. They are real parents for many of us. So strange to pretend that she has experience parenting a child when that's not true. Okay. Her stepchildren are adults. She never lived with them when they were kids. So I don't know if that's true or not, but it certainly sounds true. So was she raising teenagers? Is that her thing? Because I don't think that's the same thing, right? If you're a parent, even if you're a step parent and you're raising kids, right, from like an age 2 or something like that. Now, of course, it's splitting hairs, and I'm not a parent in any way, or a stepchild or a step parent in any way. So I don't know. But I think it might be a little bit different, but it's a weird thing for her to bring up. Of all the things to bring up, of all the mistakes, she brings up making mistakes parenting Doug's kids, I guess. All right. So a strange individual just in general. We had a couple of other questions that were brought up. Harris Faulkner clipped this one, and she was a little bit more understandable in this clip. Let's listen.
When you talk about rich people paying their fair share, can you be more specific? Income taxes are already on a graduated scale, where the more you make, the higher percentage you pay in taxes. So the rich are paying a disproportionate amount in taxes as it is. Over 40% of Americans don't pay any income taxes. Also, the really high earners may move their money offshore if there are disincentives in the U.S. This could impact the economy. I would like to hear more nuts and bolts about your economic plans.
Sure. Thank you, Pam. So first of all, it is the case in the United States of America that billionaires on average pay less taxes as a percentage than teachers and firefighters and nurses.
I'm talking about hard workers like pound the street, have some success.
Yes, no, I understand, but I want to just let's set the scene, right?
Yeah.
So
because so some of the billionaires, they do very interesting things, right? They set up family offices. They've got so much assets and so much wealth that they really can exploit the tax codes in many ways. And we've seen this before where they'll get major loans, right? So they'll not actually be taking an income, but they'll just take loans out and then pay the interest back on the loan, and then that is not taxed as an income. So they really, they have a lot of power and a lot of money, and it gets very sneaky. Now, this woman's point is absolutely true nonetheless, is that the majority of the tax burden is paid by, right, the upper income people. And you can see the spreadsheets and the pie charts and stuff like that. But there are huge portions of Americans that don't pay any taxes, and then they'll continue to vote for other people to pay more taxes. Like that is a benefit to them somehow. It's not. All it does is just give the government more disposable income that they urinate away and actually lessen any ROI on economic activity in America.
When I say that the richest among us need to pay their fair share, I am referencing that, and I need to reference that because sadly, Donald Trump, when he was president, gave tax cuts to the richest, to billionaires and big corporations, which added trillions of dollars to our deficit. So that sadly needs to be said in a way that should be obvious.
I think she's conflating 2 points here as well. Also saying that the major deficits, which were really as a result of the COVID spending, and the economic stalling out of the country was because of COVID. Right? All of that happened because of COVID. Things were humming. And anybody alive who was here not that long ago, who is in business in any way, shape, or form, remembers it. I was. I know many of you were. And then COVID came, wrecked the economy by design, and then caused a ton of spending. So if you delete that aberration, which was a global phenomenon exacerbated by the left, in fact, right, if Trump came out and said, hey, Trump, any mistakes that you made? I don't think he would acknowledge many, or if anything, because he doesn't think that way. He thinks in the power of positive thinking, and everything is a learning opportunity, and there are no mistakes. But the point is, with COVID, I think Trump, his instincts originally were it's not that big of a deal, relax. But the pressure of the world came down to bear upon him, and he was really boxed in with no choice there. But then, of course, she takes it, conflates it, says, we brought all these manufacturing jobs back, and we've done this and all these things. No, you're just rigging the numbers. So that's that exchange with that woman, and there are more of them. This was talking about grocery store prices. This gentleman was saying, look, you've been in charge. Okay, it's not just the border that's a problem. It's inflation. It's war. It's everything going on. So what are you going to do about the grocery store prices, Kamala?
Grocery prices have gone up quite a bit in the last 4 years. Yeah. And some people blame former President Trump. Some people blame President Biden. Who would you say is correct? And what would you do to bring prices down for Americans?
Thank you, Eric. And you're absolutely right. You know it. I know it. I think most Americans know it. Price of groceries is still too high, and we need to address it in a number of ways. One of my aspects of doing what we need to do to bring down the cost of living for working people and the middle class in America is to address the issue of grocery prices. Part of my background and how I come to it is probably a new approach grounded in a lot of my experiences as a former attorney general, where I took on price gouging.
Oh,
and part of my plan is to create a new approach that is the first time that we will have a national ban on price gouging.
Price gouging is going to be her solution, even though grocery stores have 1% margins and hardly make any money anyways. But they're going to be raising taxes as well, so just get ready for that. $400,000 is going to be, I guess, the new threshold under Kamala administration.
So what you're saying is anyone under $400,000 won't have taxes raised, or are you saying that anyone above $400,000 will have a tax raise?
I'm saying that there is going to be a parity around what the richest people pay in terms of their taxes. Right now, Anderson, the document, it is well documented that some of the richest people in our country have gotten away with a zero tax rate.
But if you're earning $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 under your plan, there's a good chance your taxes go up.
Oh, yeah.
We can't have this conversation without knowing it's a very complicated situation.
Very complicated, Anderson. I can't explain it, but the answer is yes, of course they're going to go up. And, $400,000 isn't what it used to be anymore. Not 3 years ago. $400,000 3 years ago got you a lot more than it did today. Home prices are up. Interest rates are up. Inflation hits everybody, everywhere, right? Everything compounds. And you're seeing it everywhere. We're all seeing it. So it's very complicated, though. She's much smarter than we are. Maybe she can figure it out for us and then, of course, solve all of our problems. But they're having a tough time. And here is what some reaction was over from CNN after that disaster.
Look, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are not taking the same exam.
Yeah.
And I think it bothers people. They're not taking the same exam. He gets to be lawless. She has to be flawless. That's what's unfair. That's what's unfair.
Well, that's a nice rhyme, man. That's pretty good.
That's what's unfair tonight. That's what's unfair tonight. They're not taking the same exam. Look, she has policies. She may not articulate them perfectly every time. She may not put the stories in the right places, but she's fighting for actual ideas that will help real people.
No, she's not. What has she communicated at all? Fighting for actual ideas? She's been in charge, Van Jones, for the last 3 years. Where have they been?
He's talking about people's penises. And so they're not taking the same exam, and that's pissing people off. It's pissing me off.
Oh, he's talking about male genitalia, and he's using the P word, multiple P words. Man, not good. His mom shouldn't be happy about that.
Also old enough to remember that if your fiscal plans were actually said to bankrupt the Social Security Trust Fund in sooner years, Donald Trump's, that would be a campaign-destroying issue. But we just gloss over things with Donald Trump.
Okay, look, you guys just gloss over things? You're spending the whole night talking about him. This was a Kamala Harris town hall, and they're talking about Trump. It's not fair. He doesn't get asked hard questions. It's whining. Why can't Kamala answer the questions? What's so complicated about this? Stop making excuses for your pathetic candidate. So there were some more. Axelrod was also on this panel. Here's what he said.
The things that would concern me is when she doesn't want want to answer a question, her habit is to kind of go to word salad city. And she did that on a couple of answers. One was on Israel. Anderson asked a direct question, would you be stronger on Israel than Trump? And there was a 7-minute answer, but none of it related to the question he was asking.
No, of course not.
And so, on certain questions like that, on immigration, I thought she missed an opportunity because she would acknowledge no concerns about any of the administration's policies. And that's a mistake. Sometimes you have to concede things. And she didn't concede much. But I'll tell you something. John King mentioned Bill Clinton. No one's going to be Bill Clinton, but you do want to relate to the people in front of you. She didn't do a lot of that. She didn't ask them questions. She didn't address them particularly. So she was giving set pieces too much.
Yeah, no back and forth. So, oh yeah, Pam, so tell me about you have a business. Yeah, I totally understand your position. So let's speak to small business owners, right? And in America, this is what Kamala could go into some answer about it, but she's terrible at it. So she was just there like a nervous high school kid who is about to be brought in front of the class to field questions, right? You're like, oh, yep. Just kind of nervous about the whole thing. Now, even Dana Bash is saying she did not land this one.
Well, I'll just tell you what I'm hearing from people who I have been talking to, and that is that if her goal was to close the deal, they're not sure she did that. And, some people have asked, is she being held to a different standard? Maybe, but that's maybe the world that she's living in.
Yeah. Are they going to do the black female thing? That's because she's a black female. Is that right? First historic black female. Yeah, different standards. Is it racism and bigotry and misogyny? Say it, Dana. We know you want to.
On the question of who she is, people are understanding that a little bit more. But what she will do, the question about her legislative priorities, name one. There wasn't one.
No.
Some more of her personality and her sort of character questions about your weaknesses or what mistakes did you make? Not necessarily the answers there.
Rough. All right. So even Dana's like, yikes. Is she voting for Trump or what's going on? So here, there was a little bit of a fact check cooking from CNN. Here's what that sounded like.
So first, let's listen to a claim the vice president made about her policy shift on fracking.
I've been very clear we could have dispensed with this in 2020. I am not going to ban fracking. I did not as vice president. In fact, as vice president, I cast the tie-breaking vote that now has opened up more fracking leases.
And you point out, too, when you were running for vice president in 2020, you were not talking about banning fracking, but...
No, Anderson, I pledged that I would not ban fracking.
Right, I know.
It is not true that Harris pledged in 2020 that she would not ban fracking as president.
True.
Her campaign has explained that she was referring to her comments in a VP debate with Mike Pence. But here's the thing about that debate. Nowhere in it did Harris say she had changed her own previous 2019 support for a fracking ban. What she did say in that debate twice was that Joe Biden, the head of the Democratic ticket at the time, would not ban fracking himself. I have the quotes here. She said, Joe Biden will not ban fracking, end quote. And then she said, quote, Joe Biden will not end fracking. He has been very clear about that, end quote. She didn't say Kamala Harris wouldn't ban fracking as president. That made sense at the time. He was the candidate. But contrary to her claim tonight to Anderson, she did not pledge until this year that she personally would not support a fracking ban. Now let's listen to something she said tonight about former President Trump's border wall.
Remember, Donald Trump said Mexico would pay for it? Come on, they didn't. How much of that wall did he build? I think the last number I saw is about 2%.
It is true Mexico didn't pay for the wall. That 2% figure, though, is at least somewhat too low. Trump repeatedly said on the campaign trail in 2015, 2016, that we need 1,000 miles of wall. And during his presidency, 52 miles of new wall were built where no wall existed before. So even that is more than 5% of his pledge. And he also built an additional 406 miles to reinforce or replace previously existing border barriers. Much of that replacement wall, guys, was significantly bigger and more daunting than the previous barriers, so I think you could argue it should count too. Now, finally, let's play something the vice president said about Trump's 2017 tax cuts.
Sadly, Donald Trump, when he was president, gave tax cuts to the richest, to billionaires and big corporations, which added trillions of dollars to our deficit.
It is absolutely true that, according to independent analysts, the wealthiest Americans got the biggest benefits from those Trump tax cuts. So this Harris claim is not false, but I think it's worth noting something she didn't mention, and that's that Americans of all income levels got tax cuts from this 2017 law. The Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center found in early 2018 that the law will reduce individual income taxes on on average for all income groups and in all states. The think tank estimated that about 65% of households would get a tax cut in 2018, and between 60 and 76% of taxpayers in each and every state. So yes, indeed, the rich were the biggest winners from Trump's tax cuts, but it certainly wasn't just for the rich.
Right, and that's because they pay the most taxes, so they're going to see the biggest gains when our government stops stealing their money. So that is a nice fact check, man, 3 for 3. So you can see this is pretty bad across the board. Not only was her performance terrible, not only was she unable to answer some of the basic questions like, what is one of your worst qualities, right? Which is like basic interview question that you do anywhere you apply for a job. Can't answer that. Then the panel is not real happy with her. Van Jones is talking about genitals, and anytime you start spiraling off, like Jake Tapper does that all the time because he doesn't know what else to talk about. You can't talk about their candidate. She's terrible. So they just talk about genitals, which is really one of the Democrats' favorite topics. It's basically all they talk about. And you might say that they're in love with genitals, but maybe not, because sometimes they remove them. But the point is, in spite of all of that, then they get fact checked as well. And 3 for 3 fact checks from this fella. So just a rough night for Kamala all around. And here's what this gentleman had to say about it.
Republicans would take another hour of Kamala Harris. We'd just press play, let her keep going.
We'd
pay for another
just
hour.
Let her go. Just go.
Let her keep not answering the questions.
Yes.
I think Anderson's asking her, well, why haven't you done it? You've been there for 4 years. Why have you done any of this? The word salad answer she gave to that was just mind-boggling. I mean, it's blown up the internet, her answer to that question. I think the things that are troubling for people were her responses to, Van said about what you're going to do to reduce costs when they asked her at the beginning. We're hurt economically. She said, I'm going to prosecute corporations, right? That's not going to lower costs. How are you going to make things better for me? I'm going to prosecute people. Trump bad is not a message that's going to get her elected. Trump bad message, I disagree with you.
Yeah, it's not going to work. They're floundering. They can feel it. They're getting panicked. And we want to see more Kamala. I heard she's not going to go on the Joe Rogan show. Big surprise there. But maybe she'll do another town hall. Maybe she'll get better at this. As far as we can tell, she's getting worse.